Let me resume my recording. We record these, as you all know. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Henry. Sorry. And let me turn on my camera and say hi properly. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another day of wonderful Sumo training. My name is John Meredith, and I will be your instructor for this session. So, as I mentioned before, I am a Sumo employee. I've been with Sumo a little over 2 years. Before that, I worked as an IT manager, a DBA, a programmer, a network admin, et cetera, et cetera. But I always managed to try to go back to what I love doing, which is teaching. So, if you love what you do, it's not work. And so, like I said, it's an opportunity for me to teach and help others. And so that's what I'm doing. Like I said, I'm living out of my home here in Bedford, New Hampshire. That's where I'm teaching the class from. I do hope at some point in time here, now that COVID is starting to wane, that perhaps we can start doing face-to-face classes and get together face-to-face at some point. I'm sure we will. It's just a matter of getting there. The only ask I have is if you've got questions, feel free to ask them. Please help us help you. So by asking your questions. And other than that, I'm assisted here with Odell Gordon. So Odell, do you want to say hi, sir?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome again. Glad to have you guys. And again, ask John questions. I'm here to help you. I'll be manning the chat area. Good luck. Enjoy.
Okay, so what do you say we get this party started? Again, I'm going to stop the streaming video here just to save a little bandwidth. And we are here to talk about Cloud SIEM administration. Again, SIEM stands for Security, Information, and Event Management. And for those of you who were with us yesterday in the Cloud SIEM Fundamentals class, right, we learned about the Cloud SIEM product a little bit. We learned about how to create rules, rule tuning, how to understand and insight, how this all sort of works. Today, we're going to change focus. We're going to change focus from an administrator's point of view. How do we get data into this product? What do we have to do to make that happen? And then we'll talk a little bit more about creating some rules. So our agenda is, again, we're going to review the Cloud SIEM data pipeline. And you can imagine, those of you with us yesterday, you'll see some test questions here as well. Then we're going to go ahead and log in, and we're going to explore the UI, but this time we're going to look at it from an administrator's perspective. So we're going to explore that user interface from an administrative perspective. Then we're going to get into data processing and configuration. We want to set it up so that we can ingest some logs and log data into this. How do we do that? And so we're going to have some labs to turn on and forward our data into the Cloud SIEM environment. We're also going to do something called ingest mapping and log mapping. We're going to tell the system about our logs so that it can process those logs. Otherwise, it will not process those logs. So that's one set of labs. And then we're going to also customize, tune, and administrate our cloud environment. For that, we're going to talk about creating some custom rules. We're also talking about creating some custom actions and a whole bunch of other things. And then after 2 hours of lecture and lab, which will also include a 10-minute break in the middle somewhere, after that, we're going to take some time and give you a chance to get certified. So just like yesterday, you all had a chance to get certified. And I would remind you that we are running a promotion right now. Whereas if you do get certified, if you take a copy of your certificate and you send it to training-promotions@sumologic.com, we will, and also include your job title in that email, just because we like to keep track of those things, your name and your job title and your company. It will send you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. So if you've been with us all 3 days this week, you've had the admin class, the regular admin class, and you had the Cloud SIEM fundamentals, and you had the Cloud SIEM admin, and you took all 3 exams and you passed all 3 exams, you could have 3 Uber Eats vouchers. So who says there is no such thing as a free lunch? And I would encourage you to take advantage of it. Okay. One thing, if any of you are Sumo Logic employees, this offer does not apply to us. So we don't get this offer. But hey, we get nifty shirts and things. So anyway, let's get into the Cloud SIEM data pipeline. Okay. As you know from yesterday, our Cloud SIEM is our enterprise security information and event management system. It is an add-on, if you will, to our normal continuous intelligence platform. And it obviously focuses here on doing security and operational issues with regards to how your environment is going. Okay. Okay. You have Nandy, you mentioned you got a coworker that's trying to register for this session. Would he be able to get in? He should be able to if he registers. Are you trying to, can you tell me, you put in there who the name of this person is and I can see if they've arrived? And if they haven't, I can give you the meeting ID and passcode to join if that's what you'd like. So if you wouldn't mind, Nandy, let me know who this person is and I can see if they're in the participants. Thank you. Just give me a quick second here to run through the participants. I do there. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Make sure I get it right. Nope, I do not see that person. So let me do this. There we go. Thank you. He said he got in. Okay, good. Hold on a second. Let me check it again. Because I do have a Suresh, but has a different last name. So.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. I think I'm not sure if you're referring to me. I was the one who just registered and I'm able to.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you came in as Priya.
Well, that form got auto-filled and I didn't have a chance. I was just in a hurry. And
no worries, no worries. We can rename you here in a little bit. So we'll take care of that. It's minor stuff. Okay.
By the way,
I'm glad you made it.
It's really I'm really glad to speaking with you again. So I attended one of the fundamentals training with you a few months back when I was working with a different organization. So I again got the opportunity to speak with you again.
So it's my pleasure to have you back. And again, just as an FYI, we're also running this session again. I've just renamed you, just so you know.
Thanks.
And we're running the session again at, hang on a second. Let's get the times here. We're running at 7 to 10 p.m. East Coast time. So that's 4 to 7 West Coast time. So, so again, if anybody, if you really like this session and you want some of your fellow employees, team members, teammates to join us, there's another session of this later today. Okay, so good. All right, so again, Cloud SIEM, it's a nice security product that lets us see what's going on. It ingests lots and lots of records and turns them into actionable insights. So I hope you find this of value. I think you will. And again, this is the process that we go through. And for those of you who remember yesterday's class and yesterday's certification exam, there's a couple of questions here. And I have no doubt in my mind, there'll be a couple of questions on this again today. So we start with our data and we ingest it like we do everything else in Sumo through our normal collection process. We set up a collector, we set up a source, and we ingest that information. And what we call these is we call these messages, okay, log messages, right? And then from there, what we're going to do is take these messages and we're going to parse them out. Now, yesterday I mentioned we parse them out. What I didn't tell you, and I'll tell you now, is we have to set up the parsing. For example, in those logs, what is the IP field? Where is that? Where is the username? We've got to tell the system where these fields are so that it parses them out correctly. So they will parse them out. Now we use the standard metadata tags that we have in this product. So, but we'll say, this field is our source device IP, and this field is our username, and this field is the email address and all that fun stuff. So we'll do a little parsing in there. And then we'll also do some mapping. We'll tell it which fields map to which fields. And then as we talked about yesterday, the product automatically enriches your data. So we'll take, for example, your domain name, we'll do a CrowdStrike lookup on it, or the domain name that's in the record, and we'll see if there's any known threats with regards to that domain name or that IP address or whatever. As the output of this process, these are now referred to as records. Records. Now we're going to take these records and we're going to compare them to several hundred built-in rules that we have. Our rules are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So in these rules, we can see, you and I can see if a record matches the rule, AKA there, this is something suspicious, something we want to look at, something we want to be aware of. We will then generate a signal from that, and we will also extract out the entity. Now, the entity could be the host name, the entity could be the IP address, the entity could be the computer name or the username or something that typically tells us who this is about. And so what we're going to do is we're going to generate this signal, which indicates there's a problem or something we want to investigate further. And then we're going to correlate that signal by the entity. So by the entity, we're going to look at all the activity that happens within a 2-week period. And if the score of the various rules that are fired off, those entities and the signals are greater than 12, it will automatically generate an insight. What this translates to is we're going to ingest lots and lots of records. It's automatically going to generate insights for you and for me. So we don't have this analyst fatigue of going through logs and trying to find out what the problems are and what's going on. Okay. So again, we ingest collection process. We'll talk about that in a second. What data are we ingesting, right? Are we ingesting the right amount of data, right? So Cloud SIEM typically needs lots of messages to create insights. So we need your CloudTrail logs, or Cloud Watch logs, whatever you're using for your security, your firewall logs, your Windows event logs, whatever you're using here. If you're not getting insights, think about adding more data here. Although one thing we've got to do with regards to our insights is we've got to map all this, and that's the process that we're going to go through here in just a few minutes. We might have too much data, right? Ingesting and passing this information can increase cost. So maybe you want to partition your data, and so use a less costly partition mechanism, and then forward it if you're, price constrained or cost constrained. Again, we teach you how to do partitions and stuff like that in our regular admin class, which was Tuesday. And then finally, the types of data that we want. Again, data quality matters, right? We want good value data. Maybe stuff off your guard duty logs if you've got AWS guard duty. Maybe stuff off your CloudTrail logs or your Windows events. So understand, the data that you really want to bring in here, whether it's structured or it's unstructured. So basically that. And then as I talked about before, when we bring in this data, we're going to parse it, right? We're going to sit there and see a message that looks something like this. It looks like an IP address, except it's got dashes instead of dots. And we'll convert it to an IP address, and we'll map it to this metadata field. Now, again, this is something we have to set up. So when we grab source data, we've got to define these. And you're going to see this firsthand in the labs. And then, of course, we're going to enrich it, look at CrowdStrike, and see if it's got any known issues. Again, we have a subscription to CrowdStrike. You don't have to worry about having a subscription to CrowdStrike. In fact, if you use our product, either this product or our continuous intelligence platform, regular Sumo, you can also, we have access to CrowdStrike, and through our product, you can send information, do lookups in CrowdStrike. So that should save you a lot of money. Okay. Then we apply it against our rules. Again, these rules are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. We manage the rules. So every 2 weeks, we update the rules unless there's something more urgent. If there's a new threat or something like that, we will immediately add it. I'll show you in a little bit where you can see where those rules have been updated and changed and all that fun stuff. You can also create your own rules, and that's something we'll talk about today with some of the exercises. Yesterday, we created a match rule. Today, we're going to create a threshold rule and a chain rule. Okay. And then again, if something matches our rule, that record matches the rule, we're going to extract out the entity, and we're going to generate that and call that a signal. So we're going to keep track of what's been fired and who it's been fired by, that entity, and then we're going to correlate that. And again, each of our rules has a score, a point value, again, typically going from 0 to 10. And so if the sum of those rules that match based on entity over a 2-week period is 12 or greater, that will then generate an insight. So that's how we can get into the actionable security investigations that we want to. By the way, that value of 12 can be adjusted. There's lots of little things in here that you can do. Okay. Now, in order to be an administrator of this, there are some things you do in the Sumo Logic user interface. There are some things that you do in the Cloud SIEM user interface. So, for example, if you want to set up privileges and set up who can access your Cloud SIEM environment, that is done in the Sumo Logic interface. That is not done in the Cloud SIEM interface. So I'm going to show you this in just a few minutes. So bear with me. I'm going to show that to you. And again, you can create roles based on however you're structured. So maybe you've got, tier 1 and tier 2 SOC analyst, and you want them to have the same rights. Well, you could create a role that says tier 1, tier 2 SOC analyst. And then you want tier 3 and SOC admins to have different privileges. So you could create a role for tier 3 and SOC admins and assign them different permissions, different privileges that they have. Or you could create 4 separate roles for these. And again, you can assign different privileges for them. So I'm going to show you where that is in just a little bit. You won't have an exercise to deal with that. Okay. One little thing to keep in the back of your mind, as I mentioned yesterday, and that is when I log in with my account, I'm a full administrator on this Cloud SIEM environment. I'm a full administrator, by the way, on the Sumo Logic environment as well. So I will see things that you won't see, right? For example, when I talk about these RBAC controls, which is role-based access controls, when I talk about these, you won't have the chance to see these when you log in. By the way, yesterday you logged in as a Training Plus analyst account. Today, you're going to log in with a Training Plus admin account. So just bear with me. We'll have you log in just a little bit. But you won't see some of these options. We have a configuration menu. And here in my configuration menu is where we're going to define things like our log mappings. We can also specify our context actions, our actions, and various other things in here. You also will have, hang on a second here, guys. You also will have the content menu. Now, when I look at the content menu, these are all the things that we have. But again, we've restricted your role as a training administrator to see only rules, rule tuning, custom insights. You don't get a chance to see all these things. But full access allows you to see these things. And again, we can go into this role-based access control and see what's going on. So in the training accounts, what we're trying to tell you is you don't have all the options. And we're just trying to protect our environment. That's all. Okay. So as I said, some of these are in the Cloud Sumo Logic user interface. Some of these in the Cloud SIEM user interface. So in the Sumo Logic interface, that's where you add your collectors and your data sources. And we talked about that in the admin class on Tuesday. But that's where we set that up. It's in the Sumo Logic interface. And all we're going to do to make it available to the Cloud SIEM is we're going to check a checkbox to forward that data to our Cloud SIEM environment. That's what we do. Also, if you need to configure partitions and data tiers, that's also done in the Sumo Logic interface. If you want to write field extraction rules, that's done in the Sumo Logic interface. And configuring our users and roles is also in that environment. Okay. Yeah, Ali, don't worry about getting signed in here. We'll take care of that in just a little bit. Okay. Everything else is in the Cloud SIEM environment. The ability to configure and ingest our mappings, to create custom content, rules, insights, all that stuff. You saw some of that yesterday, rule tuning, customizing our actions, our context actions, that is done through the Cloud user interface. So let me stop my slides for just a second. Let me go into the Sumo Logic environment. And again, I don't want you to do anything just watch, okay? And again, I'm logged in as me, which means I have full rights. And if I want to give somebody the ability to see this Cloud SIEM Enterprise node, you've already purchased it, we've already configured it on the back end. All I have to do is go into administration. And here in administration, I have users that I can create. And when I create a user, I simply give them the first name, their last name, their email address, and I assign them to a series of roles. Could be one role, could be many roles, whatever. By the way, the effective permissions are the union of your role permissions. So the permissions are actually part of the role. So here, when I create a role, maybe I want to create a role called SOC analyst or tier 1 analyst or whatever. Here's where I can go aside and decide what permissions that somebody has. Now, most of these permissions are standard Sumo Logic product permissions. Managing logs to metrics, metric rules, security permissions, allow list, all that stuff. Down here is the Cloud SIEM. And down here, you'll see that is option to view Cloud SIEM Enterprise. That's going to turn this on in the main menu. But when I check mark it, it gives me a series of other permissions. So here under the area of insights, I can allow them to comment on insights, create insights, delete insights, invoke insight actions, et cetera, et cetera. Under content, I can go in here and decide what things they can do. Under configuration, I can go in and enable various things. That's why I have full rights, because all these are checked on my environment, and only some of them are checked with the accounts that you're going to log in. But here is where you set that stuff up. So that's done through the Sumo Logic user interface test question. Okay, I want to make sure you're prepared for it. Additionally, in here under my managed data, under collection, here's where we set up our collectors. In fact, we have a collector right here. It's a hosted collector. And in that hosted collector, we're going to create some sources. You and I today are going to create some sources that allow us to ingest data into our Sumo Logic environment. And so you'll see how that works. Okay. Also done in here. Can you select which partitions are forwarded to the Cloud SIEM? You can, okay. Good question. Let me be precise. Here in these sources, these sources, this is where you forward them to your Cloud SIEM, okay? However, when you ingest this in your source, I'm sorry, where we create partitions, by the way, is under logs, under partitions. Here's where we create our partitions. The problem is that I don't see a ready connection here in my partition that says I want to forward this to my Cloud SIEM environment. So let me do a little more research on that because I don't see that connection, obviously. Obviously, we've created some partitions here for CSV records, right? Where in this partition, we're looking at the source expression and we're retaining it, but this isn't what forwards it to my Cloud SIEM environment. Even if I enable data forwarding, that won't necessarily send it to my Cloud SIEM environment. So the Cloud SIEM ingestion collection is one thing, partitions are something else. So I need to do a little research on that, Gleason, and I will get back to you on that. Okay, good question. I don't have a clean answer. While I'm here, by the way, this is also where you set up your field extraction rules. When you ingest data into Sumo Logic, you can pre-parse out the fields if you want to. You can do that with Cloud SIEM data, you can do it with log data, you can do it with metric data. Here's where you would sit there and set those up. Again, we teach field extraction rules in our admin class. So that's where we typically do that. So these things are in our normal Sumo Logic user interface. The other things we've talked about, Daniel's our question. You don't need to raise your hand. Just go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, do you get charged for forwarding the data to Cloud SIEM?
I'm sorry?
Do we get additional charge?
Okay. You get charged for all the data you ingest into Sumo Logic. So if you bring in logs and you forward them to Cloud SIEM that you're already bringing in, I don't believe you're going to see an increase of charge. If, however, you bring in some more data, some new data that you currently weren't bringing in, obviously you're going to get charged for that. However, I'm going to defer that question to one of your account team members who might know better than me with regards to that, but I believe that's how it works. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for asking. Any other questions here, ladies and gentlemen? As I said, I can go in here to the Cloud SIEM environment, and here in the Cloud SIEM environment, as an administrator, I can go in here and manage rules and network blocks and all kinds of things. As an administrator here, I can go into this configuration icon and I can play around in here as well. Again, when I go in here, and I'm going to have you log in just a few minutes, we talked about this interface yesterday. Do me a favor. Anybody who was not in class yesterday, would you please raise, or have not had the Cloud SIEM fundamentals class, would you please raise your hand? And my question is, I got to figure out if I've got to do some backfilling. Okay. want to see if I've got to do some backfilling here to kind of cover some stuff up. So I see about 6 hands. Okay, or 7 hands. Okay. All right. Thank you. So let me get back to my slides here, and let's basically, I'm going to walk you through the user interface. So what we want to do is we want you to log into our training environment. And to log into our training environment, hopefully these slides load. Thank you very much. First thing I want you to do is fire up a Google Chrome or a Firefox browser. And I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And when you get there, it should give you a page that looks like this, where it says email and password. Now, the second thing I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pick a 3-digit number. Any 3-digit number, but it's got to be a 3-digit number, okay? 001 to 999, I don't care. And if you wouldn't mind, type that in the chat box so we know what numbers you're using, okay? Yep, somebody's grabbing 999. Somebody always wants to be 007, so somebody's going to grab 007, that's fine. And then for the email address, you're going to log in as training plus admin, and you're going to replace these hashtags with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. So training plus admin with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com. And then the current password, and it changes every month. Current password is capital FEB 2022, capital ADMIN, exclamation mark. That is the admin password. Now, if you'll bear with me a second, I'm going to copy this and put this in the chat box. So everyone should be able to see this to make things easy.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
While all of us are doing this, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, do we have any upcoming trainings or cert gems for admin administration, Sumologic administration?
Because we just did it 2 days ago, it's probably not coming up as quickly as you want. I will tell you,
Actually,
there's
I
a
missed,
self-paced version of this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I missed it actually.
Understand. So let me I'll show you a different way of getting there. I don't know when the next admin training is. I'll certainly look it up. You can watch the video and all that stuff. So I'm going to show you where that stuff is. Okay. So just bear with me a moment. Let me get back to this if you don't mind. And let me again log us in to make sure we're good to go. So let me sign out. So here I am, I'm signed out. And again, what we want you to do is pick a 3-digit number. Okay, which most of you have done. Okay, just for fun, I'm going to grab 985, and 985 was the whole number of the USS Cushing, which was the last Navy ship I was on. So I'm logging as training plus admin 985 at sumologic.com. Now the current password is capital FEB 2022. I'm sorry, 22 capital admin exclamation mark. And as we all know, in Google Chrome, I can click on this and I can see it, okay? And then when I click sign in, it should in fact log me in. And I'm in, great, wonderful, signing. Now I'm gonna log out because I'm actually gonna log in with my credentials. But I wanna make sure you guys all log in, and if you're having a problem logging in, let us know, okay? Let us know. If you are logged in, if you would, please raise your hand. So if you all raise your hand, that way I know that you're all in. Those of you who want to be in, I realize not everybody's going to raise their hand. You know, some of you are just listening, that sort of thing. And what I'm first going to do is I'm going to show you where you can find both the self-paced training as well as the recording of the admin class and all that good stuff, okay? So I'm going to show you where some of that resource stuff is, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. By the way, for the purposes of grabbing the training, the recorded training and all stuff, you can also log into your own Sumo Logic environment, right? So your company's Sumo Logic environment. So again, you may have a bunch of tabs open here. I'll show you how to clean those up in a few minutes. This navigation panel may be open, it may be closed, it doesn't make any difference. So the first thing I want to show you here, a couple things I'm going to show you, is under certification. So if we click on Sumo, the home tab, certification, and you click on Get Certified. You'll see, you only see 3 of these boxes here. You won't see the Get Certified. You can't take our certification exams with that account. We want to make sure you take it with your named account, but you won't see this box, and that's okay. Over here where it says Become a Sumo Logic Expert, this is where our self-paced training is. And if you click on that, you can see what our current analyst password is. And by the way, I remind you, these passwords change once a month, and I can pretty much guarantee you, I don't know what the password for March is going to be, but it probably will not have MAR in it, okay? Because we put February in this password. Okay, we try to be different between our passwords. Anyway, you can go in here under General, and under General, here is the Administration Self-Paced course. It is basically the same content as our instructor-led class. So you can register for this, you can go through the labs for this, you can do all this fun stuff. That's where the self-paced training is. And then you can take the certification exam if you want to. Please share the URL in chat. Of course, I can do that. There's the self-paced course. Now, somebody else said, you know, you can listen to recordings and all that stuff. So let me go back to Sumo Logic here for a second. Let me go back here to my home tab. Let me go back to my learn tab. And here I got a bunch of micro lessons about how to set up collectors and some other things, which are kind of nice. They're on YouTube. You can go out to YouTube and you can subscribe to the Sumo Logic channel. And there's all kinds of little 5 to 10 minute recordings we have on a lot of different things. Down here, we have our labs for the administration class. The labs for the administration class. And then over here in the community, there's a little community box. If you click on that community box, and again, I'll share this link, and you go into community and you search for the word slides. You see this link. This is the link I'm going to copy. Okay. This link has all of our courses, and it has a link to all of our labs, to a recording of this class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're in the process of moving stuff away from here, and I'll explain to you in a minute why. You can go in here, like I said, here's our administration class that we're in right now. You can click on this link and you can see a recording. No problem. You can go ahead and click on that and watch that video and all that fun stuff. There might be a little commercial here. Just ignore that. And looks like a 1 minute, 30-minute commercial that you can see. But you can go in and see. I lost it. Good thing I copied the link, huh? For the administration class, like I said, you can see the recording. There's the recording for it. And there's the recording of all the information there. There's also a copy of the slides. The reason that we're moving away from this is because when we originally used and set up our slides in here into the slide share environment, they did not require you to have a membership with them. Now, if you want to download any of our slides, it asks you to sign up and get a subscription. So we are in the process of moving this into our certification area. Unfortunately, we haven't moved the admin class. So let me be clear here. Again, if I click on home in Sumo Logic, I click on certification, I go into our certification area. You'll see there's a switch here, a box for recorded live training. And if I click on that, oh, cool. They did put the administration stuff here. Good. 2 days ago, we taught this class, this wasn't here. Good. I'm glad they got it fixed. So here, ladies and gentlemen, is where you can go. Don't go to community now that we've got this fixed. Go here, and I'm going to paste this in, to access our recordings, to access our slides, to access anything that you want. Okay.
So like I said, hopefully you're in the right.
There you go. There's our boss, Josh Brotham, teaching this class. And we got the slides and we've got the lab guide. So that hopefully tells you where you can get that information. Apologize for a little bit of the confusion there. Any questions about that? One other thing, in this course, we have a lab guide. So our labs, we decided to put into a PDF and make this PDF available to you. So again, I could go out here to our certifications, and I could go into recorded live training, and I could find our Cloud SIEM admin, and I could register and download this PDF from here.
As a group.
But I'm also going to make it a little easier for you because I'm going to upload that. Okay. And David's like, yeah, I'm glad everything's available. I told my coworkers yesterday, and that's great. I'm with you, David. I highly, give me a second here. I am in the process of uploading the PDF document now. Now, most of you can probably see that document and you can download it. Some of you, your companies in their interface with Zoom do not allow you to get files this way. So as I said, if you want to get this lab guide, you can click on this link, which I will put in the chat box, and you can download it from this link. Okay. So there you go. But you may want this link because these are the exercises and the steps and the things that we're going to do. Okay. Any questions so far? All right, let me go ahead and lower all the hands. Looks like everybody's logged in. I assume there's no problems with logging in. So let's get back to this and let's talk about what we need to do here. Okay. So here in Lab 0, you've logged in. You've logged in and you're able to get into the environment. Again, Odell just put the information in there as far as the ability to log in and all that stuff. And the other thing you want to do is click on this Cloud SIEM Enterprise icon so that you're in the Cloud SIEM environment. Now, let's talk about this Cloud SIEM environment. So again, I'm logged in. If you need to, you can open up the navigation panel by clicking up here by the stack of hamburgers or pancakes or whatever. And then here in the main menu, which is in the lower left corner, you can click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And that takes you into the Cloud SIEM Enterprise. Now, normally we would focus on looking at this as an administrator, okay? But some of you were not in yesterday's class, so let me go through the interface. So this is my home button. If I click on this, it will take me back here at any time. I can also, if I want to, click on my insights, and I can see a listing of all of my insights. I can look at my signals. I can look at my entities. I can look at my records. We'll do that in just a little bit, and I'll explain why. We can go into our content, whatever. To get back here, like I said, all we have to do is click on this little Sumo logo in the upper left-hand corner. This takes us to our home page. And obviously, I think the first thing you'll probably notice is this heads-up display, okay? This radar, or this heads-up display, shows me all the records I've ingested over a particular period of time. What is that period of time? Well, in this case, it's 24 hours. So over here on the left, I've got a selector switch, and I can select whatever range I want of time. And now this reflects 12 hours in my case. So these bluish purplish things are my records. These lighter blue column things are my signals. And then these red triangles are my insights. So we automatically ingested in the last 12 hours over 14,000 records. From that, we've processed and generated 10,000 signals, and that's generated, in our case, 4 insights. Now, I can also see over the last, since this previous period, which is 12 hours, I can see how much we've gone up or gone down, just to get an idea here. Now, I'm going to put this back to 24 hours, which is the default. I can see various insight metrics. Since this is a event management system, I can see how we're doing as far as response and remediation. And because we haven't looked into these and stuff like that, we haven't done a whole lot of remediation yet, okay? But I can also see my insights by status, okay? So I got 6 new insights. We haven't started any of them yet. We haven't done any custom work. By the way, these status fields can be customized by you, the administrator. Here, I can see that I've, over this timeline, and this is my timeline down here on my x-axis, I see that I've generated some new insights. I've also closed 4 other insights. And I'm going to ask that none of you, please, none of you, close an insight. So those of you in class yesterday, you know you can close an insight. And the reason I don't want you to close an insight is because we use those for other classes. We've got another session of this class running later today. And if we close the insights that they're using, they're going to have a hard time doing what they need to do. Okay. So again, this is my heads up display where I can see this information. Over here, I see the latest insight. So this is my current time. It goes backward. Here's 23 hours ago or whatever. But here's my latest insight. I could click on it here, but I can also see it here. So my insights are, again, a collection of signals correlated by a specific entity. In this case, the entity is a username, rico.dynamite. And the name of this insight, it is named after our MITRE attack tactics and techniques. That's how this insight got named. I see it consists of 3 signals. It occurred over a 5-day period. Its severity is high. In an insight, they're either marked low, medium, high, or critical. Okay. Okay. Matt asked, why is there a big area with insights, with 0 insights? I don't know. I guess I didn't get any insights during that time frame. Maybe I didn't get any data either. I don't know. But it looks like I'm getting records. So maybe there wasn't anything exciting going on during that time. So it happens. No problems. Okay. Anyway, down here is my syslog. So if somebody modifies an insight, closes an insight, whatever, I'll be able to see it through this syslog. Now, our job, or an analyst job, excuse me, is to go in here and examine the insights. So if I click on an insight, either by clicking on this red triangle, or if I go into this insight and click review, or if I go up here to insights, and again, by default, these insights are all listed in descending order. So if I pick an insight to investigate, by the way, notice this one has an entity of Rico Dynamite. This one has an entity of an IP address. So different, who type values. But if I click in this insight, here is where I can add comments as I investigate this, as I troubleshoot this, as I do whatever. Over here, as I said, this insight consists of 3 signals. This first signal is an AWS API call from a terminated Active Directory account. So we've got a terminated Active Directory account that's making an API call in our AWS environment. Suspicious? You betcha. By the way, you see these little boxes right here to the right of this thing? That's our context actions. And you can customize these context actions. If I look over here where Rico Dynamite is, I can click on my context actions and I can do a who is search, or I can send it to my Sumo Logic log search or whatever. But here I've got a signal that has a score of 6. This next signal, which occurred at this time, has a score of 2. 6 plus 2 is 8. As I scroll down, this one has a score of 11. 6 plus 2, which is 8, plus 11, which is 19. If within a 2-week period of time, the scores add up to 12 or more, then it generates an insight. So this is telling me where my problems are, pure and simple. That's what this is doing. Okay. Okay. Mark asked a question, is there maximum time for the insight radar of 7 days? Can that be increased? I'm not sure, Mark. That's a good question. I have to ask one of our SEs with regards to this product. But my question is, once you start using this and you start whittling this stuff down, do I need to go back more than 7 days? Okay. Do I really care? So I'm trying to go after my fresh stuff, my new stuff. I'm not trying to go after historical stuff, I hope. So, but I can click into these insights or these signals, and I can see what kind of information, what's going on here, what IP address did it come from? Where is that IP address? That's part of our enhancement, right? Our enrichment. Who the vendor was and where's the stuff coming from and the fields that we're using. So again, those of you who missed yesterday's class, this gives you a little idea of how we do things and why we do this. And by the way, I can click in this x-axis here, I can click this to take me to the next signal. And I can click to take me to the next signal again if I want to. Or I can go up here where signals are and I can click on that to take me back to my collection of signals. But our mission would be, as a SOC analyst, to be to investigate this. and understand what's going on and what it's telling me and what actions I need to take, right? All right. Now, from an administrator point of view, we want to focus again on this configuration area where we're going to configure. We want to focus on this content area where we're going to configure and do things. Also, as an administrator, you want to focus on this help area. Now, when we modify the rules, right? We modify the rules, we will generate an announcement. And so every time we update the rules, we will tell you, here's the rules, here's what we've changed. In fact, what you'll notice is if you haven't logged in a while, and I'm going to go ahead, bear with me a second, I'm going to close out of this. I'm going to log in with a different account. Just humor me for a second. So bear with me a second while I log out. Because this is a test question, I want to make sure you're all good. And I don't care if I log in as an analyst. I'll tell you what, I'll just log in as this person. It doesn't make a difference. Hang on. If I go in here either as an analyst or as an administrator, it doesn't make any difference. Come on. If those announcements have got an update, oh, this is really going slow. Okay. If those announcements have an update, I will see this red gleam up here. And that red gleam means something's been updated, right? We've got new announcements. The reason I point this out, the reason I showed this to you, because you're going to see it on the test. Okay. So I want to make it very easy for you to understand and get those test questions right. So if you see a red gleam up here, that means you've got new announcements. That's where you'll see it. Okay. All right. Okay. So Nandy asked a good question. Does the product automatically archive older insights, or is the way to archive those older insights? No, it typically does do that. It does archive that information. And more importantly, it also archives your comments. So it does keep a history of that. And actually, you can go into Sumo Logic and you can run reports and dashboards and things with regards to the CSE environment. And you can also build queries if you want to. So yes, it does all of that. And appreciate the question. So thanks for asking. Okay, let me relog back in as me. Let me relog back in as me. I'm moving a little too fast. There we go. Okay. All right. So again, I'm going to go back in here to our Cloud SIEM environment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's lab 1. So here in our Cloud SIEM environment, they want us to explore this. And again, there's that information. So lab 1 is done. Okay. Want you to be aware of. One other thing I didn't point out that I probably should, so bear with me. If you're in here and you want to go back to the Sumo Logic tool, that's this icon here. You can go back to our continuous intelligence platform. When you click on this, you'll notice it opens up in a new tab, which I find kind of annoying. I should use this existing tab. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a bug. But I want you to be aware of that. Hopefully we get that fixed here shortly. All right. So let us get into ingesting some data, configuring, and getting some data into our Cloud SIEM environment. How do we do this? So what we're going to do is we're going to forward data from our Sumo Logic environment to our Cloud SIEM environment. So in order, if you bought Cloud SIEM, there is a back-end configuration that's got to be done by our Sumo Logic organization. We've got to give you this functionality, okay? And since we're on an AWS environment, we'll do it through the AWS environment. Done. It's a one-time configuration and you're all set. Then we need to go into your collectors and your sources, specifically your sources, and we need to enable data forwarding to take it to your Cloud SIEM environment. And then you are going to configure your log and ingest mapping, so it knows based on the log type how to parse and where to put those fields. So this is the process that we're going to go through. Okay. These are kind of questions you've got. Okay. Yep, Nandy, you're correct. Nandy puts here in the chat box that I said the score goes from 0 to 10. Okay. And for test purposes, that statement is true. They have recently added a score of 11 that you can put in there, but quite frankly, I wouldn't worry about it. It's not going to be, it shouldn't be on your test. If it is, the answer is 0 to 10. So that's the range. When you create a rule, that's the range, and I'll get into it. We get into the rules. I'll talk about that again. How do we find field extraction rules that Sumo has created for popular log sources like Windows, et cetera, et cetera? Wow, Andrew, good question. It's more of an regular admin question, but I'll go ahead and answer it. So bear with me a second. Let me stop this. Let me go in here. Let me go back to Sumo logic. And here in my Sumo logic, if I go into manage data, if I go in here to logs, here are my field extraction rules. Okay. And so how can I find out which ones? Well, I can look at the source category, the scope, and see if they're going after event logs or Apache or what they're going after. However, let me answer your question a little bit more succinctly. If I want to add a field extraction rule, there's an option here to add rule, and I can give my rule a name. I'll just throw my initials just to get rid of that. And then I define what data is it that I want. So maybe I want to say source category, and I want to grab my Windows logs or my CloudTrail logs or whatever I want here as far as the data that I want to deal with. I get the sense that somebody wants to grab Windows logs. So bear with me a second while I see if I have a data source for my event logs. I'll tell you what, I got my IS access logs. We'll just use that. Then here we've got a bunch of pre-built templates that you can use. So we know what AWS S3 usage logs look like. We know what Apache access logs look like. We know what IIS access logs look like. And therefore, if I click on these templates, it will pre-build my expressions, and I can use that template to then parse out the fields and stuff that I want. So here's how you would build a field extraction rule. All right. And again, we get into this in our admin class. And then here's where I can see what field extraction rules I have for Windows. So yeah, here's a whole bunch here for OS Windows, Windows security events, okay, Windows default fields. So I can look at these and see where that is. So I hope that answers your question, Andrew. Okay. And if you don't have a pre-built template, you can obviously write your own expressions to extract the fields that you want. So that's basically how that works. All right. So let me get back to this and let's do another lab here in just a minute. Now, one thing, when you want to bring logs into our Cloud SIEM environment, you have to ask yourself some questions. Is the data that we're bringing in structured or is it unstructured? Because when we define it, we're going to say whether it's structured or unstructured. Structured data is typically consistent. Each log message behaves the same way as the last. Okay. Does your data have a syslog header so we can ignore the first row? Does it? Does it not? You know, what's the format of your data? Is it JSON, XML, CEF, Leaf? What's the data type? And then also, do you have existing field extraction rules? If you don't have field extraction rules, we're going to have to map the fields. And then what product and or vendor do your messages come from, so that we can put that into our signals and stuff like that. So we're going to do a series of labs here. We're going to do a set of labs here, lab 2, 3, 4, 5, to go through this process. All right. Again, if you're looking at your PDF handout, if you go on to lab number 2, right? Go on to lab number 2. In this lab, we're going to create a simple HTTP source, and we're going to go ahead and set this stuff up. So let me start lab 2 by going back into my Sumo Logic environment. And I need to go back to my Sumo Logic CIP environment where my collectors and my sources are. Now we've taken the liberty of setting up here under manage data, under collection. These are our collectors. We've created a collector for you, okay? Now we're creating this collector. Again, it's using HTTP data, so it's going to be a hosted collector. If you need to install your own hosted collector, which you don't need to do for this lab, you would add collector, you would say hosted collector, you would fill this information out and click save, and that's that. We've already created the collector for you. This is a hosted collector. We're going to collect data through HTTP. Okay. Yeah, some of you want a coffee. Give us about 15 minutes and we'll get there. Okay. We'll get a break. All right. So here, what we want to do is go into this admin training sim, and we want to add a source. I want you to click on add source. Now under add source, what we're going to add here are HTTP logs and metrics. These are logs coming in through Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That's what you're going to select. And so when you click on that, it opens up this source. And in this source, excuse me, in my directions here, let me go back to my directions. We want to add, we can call it HTTP training data R with your initials, right? HTTP training data, HTTP training data, and I'll put my initials in here, okay? And we want you to do the same. Now you can put a description in here if you want. You can put a source host in here if you want. You can put a source category. And of course, we do recommend you put in a source category as a best practice, although this isn't necessarily going to help us out too much. And most importantly, to forward this to the Cloud SIEM, we're going to check this checkbox. This is how we enable it to go into the Cloud SIEM, by checking this checkbox. Pure and simple. And then here it's going to say, do I want to extract the timestamps out of the logs? Yes, I do. We're going to go with all these defaults. And we're going to click save. Now, when we click save, it gives us our HTTP source address. And normally I would tell you, to copy this and save this somewhere in a text file. However, I'll show you how to see it later. So I'm going to click OK here. And now you'll notice that I have added my source. Here's my source. And if I want to see that URL again, I can click on show URL. We will need this URL. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it for right now. So we have, you have, I have created a source, and we are forwarding it to our Cloud SIEM environment. And so that takes care of the first part of lab 2. In lab 3, what we're going to do is we're going to send a log message, or simulate sending a log message to our Cloud SIEM. So here in lab 3, there is some code that they want us to use. In step 2 here on page 8, step 2, there's some code here. Now, I'm going to use terminal since I'm on a Mac. For those of you on a PC, if you've got like PowerShell or something like that, you can use that. But what I want to do here is get out of that for a second. I'm going to go in here to my terminal, and I'm going to paste this code in. Now, there's 2 parts to this code that we have to fix because it's not going to run properly, okay? And for whatever reason, it's trying to execute on me, okay? 2 things I want to change. One, this attacker name, I want to change to my initials so I can easily find it. The other thing I need to change here is I need to change this HTTP source URL, and I need to get rid of the angle brackets. And I want to put in that URL that I copied from here. So let me up arrow. Let me backspace around here, take the attacker name. Again, I want to get rid of the angle brackets, and I'm just going to put in here my initials so I can easily find it. And then for this HTTP source URL, I'm going to backspace over that. I want to make sure I leave that space between application JSON. And I want to go back here into my, or your specific source, click show URL, take this URL, copy this URL, and then add it to that. Add that URL and paste it in. Now, when I run this, it's going to execute that curl command. It's going to send a message into my Cloud SIEM environment. Now, so that's lab 3. We're going to sit there and see this message. And the problem is what we're going to see is the message is going to fail. Okay. Okay. Brian, we'll have to take a look at that. Okay. Oh, I see. David, gotcha. Thank you. We'll take a look at that and see what's going on. But what I want to do is I want to go back into my Cloud SIEM environment. And this, by the way, is the only time you typically go into records. You want to use records to see if something failed. So if I go in here to my records, and what I want to do is I want to search for a record. Metadata source category. Oh, I made a mistake. I skipped something here, folks. Sorry, my apologies. Let me go back to Sumo. My apologies, folks. I made a mistake. Let's go back to manage data, my collectors, find my source. Let's edit the source. I forgot to add a source category. So I'm going to call this training JWM. Okay. Training JWM, my initials. Okay. I'm going to rerun that curl command again, if you don't mind. Now, what I want to do is go into my Cloud SIEM environment again under records. This time I want to look by metadata. I want to look by source category. So somewhere down here is my source category. And I want to say whether it is or is not or contains. I'm going to go with contains. And I'm going to see if it contains my initials, JWM. Okay, nothing yet. Run this again. This does take a minute to run, folks. Let me just for fun here, change this and try to go with metadata, source category, contains, and I'll make it training JWM. And I should see my record come in. It does take a moment for this to happen. Because again, this record went from my computer in my terminal session, went from my computer in Bedford, New Hampshire, out to our AWS environment, wherever the heck this is. And then it's being processed in here. And what I should get when I run this is I should see my record and I should see that it failed. There it is. Finally here. It failed. And the reason is it failed is it didn't know what to do with this record. Doesn't know who the vendor is, doesn't know what the product is, and it doesn't know how to parse this record. So it failed, and it failed intentionally. I wanted it to fail. I want you to see this. Okay. I could open it up, and again, I can see it failed to parse. It doesn't know who the vendor is. So this is stuff that we're going to do in the subsequent labs. So back to my labs. We're going to go in here to, excuse me, lab 4 on page 10 of our PDF. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead in lab 4. We're going to go up here to our configuration. And we're going to click on under integration Sumo Logic. So we're going to click on the gear, click on Sumo Logic, and we are going to define and create a new ingest mapping. Okay. Okay. How did you show that URL again? Okay, Mark, hang on, let me answer your question. Again, the URL, how I got there was in my collection, in my Sumo logic environment, here in my source, there we go. Here, what says show URL, that's what gave me my URL. And I copied that URL into my terminal where my command is. So this is the URL right there that I copied. And then I ran this. So what we're doing is we're trying to send a message to this source. And of course, the system is basically not going to process that message. Does that answer your question? Are we good to go? Now in lab 4, as I said, what we're going to do here is we're going to go into our Sumo logic under integration, under Sumo logic, and we're going to create an ingest mapping. We're going to create an ingest mapping here. We're going to click on create. And then in this, we're going to specify the source category. So earlier I created the source category of training JWM. And so it's going to say, look, I now know I can accept this source category, training/JWM. Then as far as the format goes, what have I got? Have I got a syslog? Is it JSON? Is it Windows? What is it? It's JSON. So in our case, the message we're going to send is JSON. For the vendor, what we're going to do is we're going to type in the word vendor and put in your initials. Now, obviously, if it's Microsoft, you would put Microsoft. If it's Citrix, you would put Citrix. If it's Sumo, you would put Sumo, Sumo Logic, whatever. And then the product, we're going to do the same basic thing here. The word product and our initials. Again, Windows, Microsoft Windows, product would be Windows, 20, whatever. Mac OS, whatever the product is. So we're going to fill in this vendor. We're going to fill in this product. And then don't forget to throw the switch that says, I want to enable this. I want to enable this. Okay. And in this case, you don't need to worry about the event ID. You don't need to worry about the event ID. The event ID we can leave blank. And we're going to click create. Now, what that's going to do is now when we try to bring in and run that command, it will bring it in, but it still doesn't know how to parse it, which fields are which. So what we want to do is we want to also then go into lab number 5, lab 5, and we want to set up our log mapping. So we're going to go into lab 5, and we're going to go in here to our gear. This time we're going to go to log mapping. Click on log mapping. And again, we are going to create a new log mapping. So we're going to create a new log mapping. Now, is your data that you're sending structured or unstructured? The data that we're sending is structured. It's consistent. Each message is the same as before, just different values, same structure. So I'm going to click structured. And then when a log from vendor, and I'm going to specify vendor JWM with a product code of, again, product JWM, you would use your own initials here. And it's got a format of JSON. And then here it says, and the event ID matches a regex statement. So here, when the regex statement, we're going to type in a period and a star, which the period and star basically means bring in everything. Okay. I don't care what's there, bring it in. Okay. Now, one thing, when we create this mapping, you'll notice this red triangle down here. And this red triangle is telling me I need to fix some things. I need to do some things. Like one of the things I need to do is I need to name this. I forgot to name this. So I'm going to call this JWM mapping. Okay. I'm going to give it a name that gets rid of one of my errors. And then for my records of type with vendor and all that fun stuff, bear with me a second. Where it says with vendor, I'm going to say match input vendor, and that's going to match both of these. For this record of type, I am going to say that this record of type is authentication is what I'm looking for here. Authentication, record of type authentication. Okay, so record of type authentication. Again, in the vendor here, you're going to say match vendor and it'll populate both of these. It should populate both of these. Oh, goody. Looks like I broke it. But most importantly, down here is where we're going to map our fields. So we're basically telling it what to accept. We're telling it what to process. There we go. Now, in here, what I'm saying is when I look at my message here, I have a field called IP. And I want to map that to my metadata. So in my input field, I'm going to type in IP. My output field, it's got a pick list of various fields. And I want to find, excuse me, per my direction, the field known as device IP. And I can start typing in and I see there's device IP. And I want to add this field. So when it receives this log message, it's going to parse out that IP field and it's going to call it device IP. Then over here in my input field, I also want to grab threat name. Because again, in my message here, I have a threat name and I want to parse and collect that field. So again, threat name, this is camel case. And then over in my output field, I can start typing in threat and I want to select threat name. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically parsing out and defining my fields. So this field goes to this field and I'm going to add that. Now, so I've added my fields. Life is good. What is this complaining about? A valid vendor and product output is required. I thought I did. I'm not going to skip any values, by the way. Okay. The order here, by the way, becomes kind of important. So let me tell you what. Let me cancel this. Do this real quick. And period star. And then here, I'm going to say matches values. Okay. And then down here, IP, device IP, add threat name, what's it complaining about here? Record type is required. Yeah. Okay, good. And again, this is going to be authentication. Oh, I see. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay, good. Now, hopefully that is it. Giving me fits. I should be able to hit submit here, and it should parse through this. Okay. And now I'm going to run the record again, and it will in fact work. So let me do this. Let me close this up for a second. Let me create this. Oops, I'm sorry. I did my ingest stuff. Let me go in here and do it fresh again. For whatever reason, it's giving me a little grief. Device IP and threat name. Threat name and then go up here for authentication. And my arrows are all gone. Good. Okay. So now I can click submit. So now it knows how to parse this information out. And I can go back to my log mappings and I can see all my various log mappings here. And the point is, yep. Now, if I run my command, so I'm going to go back here. And by the way, this run the command again is lab number 6. We're going to send another log message. So all I'm going to do is do an up arrow here. We're going to rerun it again. Just for fun, I'm going to run it a couple of times. Okay. And now it will then process these. And now when I go into records and I look for my metadata product source or source category contains, again, training/JWM. Now I see that I've still got my failed records, but next time when it reads the next records, as I refresh this, it will in fact allow my records through. They will succeed. So right now it still hasn't received those records yet. In fact, my advice is this is probably an excellent time for you and I to take a break while we're waiting for this to happen. Oops, there we go. There we go. Okay, so this record failed, this record failed, this record worked. Okay. And now you can see I can open up this record and I can see the information and it populated the IP address and it populated the fields and the threat name and all that good stuff. So, but as I said, what do you say we take a break? Take about a 10-minute break. And I will see you guys back when this counter gets down to 0. So somebody asked about getting some coffee. Please get that Sumo Logic coffee or coffee that you want. And I'll see you back in about 9 minutes and 51 seconds. Thank you.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Hey, John, blessing.
I'm sorry.
So going back to the log mapping question I just asked, would it make sense to make sure that there's mappings in both the Sumo?
Yes, it
ingestion?
would. And it probably what you'd use is you'd use field extraction rules and parse them both at the same time.
Okay, so this way it does it at the beginning, not at the end.
Correct. Correct. Yep.
Cool, thanks.
Absolutely. No problem. Thanks. Good question. And folks, we're on a break. We'll see you back here in about 7 minutes. Hey, folks, this is John. Hopefully we are back and ready to roll. Just wanted to check here. Hopefully you all had a good chance to get a good break in. Let me also make sure everybody's got their microphones enabled in case you want to ask questions, and basically go from there. Okay, so when we last left off, okay, we did something here. When we last left off, we went and tried to send a test message. Just ignore that. We tried to send a test message, a record here. And initially, when we set this record, after we set up our collector and our source, it failed. But now that we have done two things, we have told it to accept this record. Okay. Let me change this to, actually, tell you what, let's, yeah. Trying to find my training / JWM, but the point is we did that. We told it about the vendor. We told it about the source category. And then additionally, we went in here and we went into our log mappings and we told it how to map the logs. And so now when we go into records and we search for our records, and again, you can do it by lots of different mechanisms. I'm going to use source category. And again, I'm going to use contains just because it's easier than equals, just to be more precise here, give myself some broad stuff. And so now I am seeing these records are starting to come in. Okay, they're all coming in, they're all being processed. And this is a process that you as the administrator would have to do. Okay. Whoops, excuse me. That's right. I didn't turn off. Okay, good. I want to make sure the recording was still going on. I'm sorry. So now we can ingest records in, and that's obviously a job of an administrator. All right. Now, a question was asked really on the break, and it's a good question, and I want to share it with you, everybody. So the question is, this happens. Where does this happen with regards to Sumo? If I'm bringing data into Sumo anyway, do I have to do this again with the Cloud SIEM? This Cloud SIEM processing that happens is part of Sumo, but it's also kind of after Sumo. And so you would, if you've already got parsing set up, if you did field extraction rules and you defined your field extraction rules, this would automatically set it up, and you do it once for any logs you have coming into Sumo and any logs you have coming to Cloud SIEM. But if this is separate, then you do have to set up this log mapping and set this stuff up. So my advice is to set up your field extraction rules to do a lot of this for you. You've still got to go in and you've still got to define who the vendor is and that. But if you do field extraction rules, you don't have to worry about doing the parsing. And that's my advice to you guys, is I'd still do the parsing and try to avoid doing this extra work. So anyway, so that's what that lab was all about. That's what those series of labs was all about. So what we did, like I said, was we went in and we configured our data forwarding, right? And then we copied that URL out. Then we sent the terminal window or a command window, and we entered that curl command in there, modifying a little bit. And we noticed it failed. And the reason it failed is because we need to define the log and ingest mappings. So we did that in those subsequent labs, and then we sent it, and off to the races we go. Okay. And now we see that, our messages are coming in successfully. Okay. Now, what I want to do is let's talk about customizing and tuning our Cloud SIEM environment. Again, mostly from an administrative perspective. Those of you in yesterday's class, we talked about Cloud SIEM rules and how you can create your own rules if you need to. Now, we provide a whole bunch of rules based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and we maintain our rules. But if you add your own rules, then you're obviously responsible to maintain them, and you can have as many rules as you want. Maybe there's some specific situation, some specific proprietary software that you're running that you want to be cognizant of. That's perfectly understandable. You would write your own rules and you would maintain those own rules. So a Cloud SIEM rule is logical code that is going to fire based on the incoming records. And when it fires, it creates a signal. And as you know, that signal parses out the entity, and then we're going to look for correlation of that signal. Okay. There are 4 types of custom rules. There's a match rule that we showed you yesterday. It's a simple Boolean condition. There is a threshold rule where you're looking for a certain count that matches a given condition. And by the way, these make great test questions. So be aware that you'll see this probably again today. There's a chain rule, which has 2 or more different events within a given time frame. So for example, in the chain rule, I want to see if somebody failed in at least 5 times, and then they were successful to log in within a time frame of an hour. So I'm looking for failed and then success, or I'm looking for something and then something else. And then finally, the last one is an aggregation rule. And you want to aggregate records that match a condition in a given time frame. So somebody's accessing my environment from a specific IP. I want the count of how many different times they've tried to access my IP or access my environment here within a specific hour or whatever. So these are the 4 types of rules. And we're going to go in here and we're going to show you how you can create those rules. And we're going to show you the chain and the threshold. Now, in the rule interface, you'll find it's basically broken up into 2 sides. What triggers this, and then what you want to show as far as your signal. So the left side is an if statement or whatever that says, hey, I got a problem. By the way, when you apply and create your own rules, you can apply rule tuning expressions to that. For those of you who don't remember yesterday, rule tuning expressions allow you to define an exception to that rule. That's what rule tunings are used for. So for example, if I have a rule that says I want to monitor my firewall and I want to see if anybody tries to fiddle with it, okay, great rule. But what about the person who maintains your firewall? What about your firewall administrator? Do you want that rule to fire when they play with it? Probably not. So you could create a rule tuning expression that says, when they try to do this, ignore it. You apply that rule tuning expression to a rule. Again, once you've defined the logic that fires off the rule, what do you want the signal to say? What do you want it to display? What do you want it to provide? And here's where you provide that score. And again, that score for test purposes goes from 0 to 10, but in reality, it does go up to 11, but that's another story. Best practices for custom rules. Check to see if you have an existing rule first. If you do, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Use your existing rule. Know your system well. Like I said, do you have some proprietary applications that we wouldn't know about that you might want to create some custom rules for? Understand your risk appetite. If you've got a higher risk appetite, if you got lower risk appetite, if you're worried about more risk, then you probably want to write some rules around that. And then understand the 4 different rule types well, and you will over time. Make small changes in tests. So when you create a rule, you're gonna mark it as a prototype. That kind of puts it in test mode. Basically, by marking it as a prototype, it will not generate an insight. All right? It prevents from generating insight. So save new rules as a prototype to monitor and test behavior. Again, it will prevent it from being part of an insight. And then once you're happy with how it tests, then you can clear that prototype mark and allow it to generate insights. The worst thing you could do, quite frankly, to your SOC analyst is create a new rule that automatically generates a whole bunch of insights, false or whatever, while you're testing out this rule. So that's why you can mark it as a prototype, and I'll show you where that setting is. Now, as I mentioned before, each of your rules, when they match a record that matches, they generate a signal. And these signals all have a score, right? We went back in here and you define what your score for that particular signal is. Well, when those signals that are correlated by entity, like for example, here these green boxes are all one entity. These red triangles are all another entity. These blue circles are all another entity. And each signal, this is the score value of it. And so the question is, when the sum within a 14-day period, when the sum of those equals or greater than 12, that generates an insight. That's how an insight automatically gets created. So here, if I look at this, 6 plus 7 is 13, plus 5 is 18. That's greater than 12, an insight. This one has 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 3. That's equal to 10. 10 is not greater than 12, no insight. This one down here mathematically is 12 or greater. It's an insight. Okay, that's how insights get generated by these signals. Other custom, so these are the various things that you can do. Other customizations that you can do as an administrator, you can create match lists. So for example, here, you want to group your entities together that you want to block or allow, you can create a match list. Maybe you want to filter out a set of IP addresses you don't want to, you want to track. You can also create insights, custom insights if you want to, which will cause an insight to fire. You can customize your actions and you can customize your workflows. So let me talk about the workflows and the actions first. I'm going to do this a little out of order. Okay. Okay. Mark says, will the test have a lot of overlap? It'll have some. I mean, it won't ask you specific material from yesterday, but obviously we talked about the 4 different rule types. So you'll see that question in both exams. Yep. So thank you. All right. So what I want to do here is I'm actually going to do these in kind of reverse order. Let's talk about some administrative customizations. So if I go in here to my Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM environment, and if I click on the upper left-hand corner, you can, I can, we can go in here and do some customizations. All right. We can modify context actions, statuses. Let's talk about statuses for a second. If I click on insights here, if I click on insights, you'll see here, I'm seeing a listing of all of my insights. That's great. I can also click on this icon, which shows me a listing of all my insights by their status. Well, currently here I have 4 statuses. I have new, I have in progress, I have don't use, I have email sent. What do you say we set up, let's say we hire a contractor that we send some of these tough insights out to so they can investigate. So what I can do, what you can do is we can go in here and in statuses, I can add a new status. So maybe I want to create a status and I will call this outsource. And this is where I might outsource my various things. So I create this new status. It's now here. And now if I go back to my insights, there is my new status. So you can sit there and adjust and create these various statuses that you want. Now, again, just to clean things up a little bit for myself here, I'm going to go into statuses and I'm going to go ahead and remove that one. Okay. But as you see, it's really easy to do. Additionally, when you are inside of an insight, if I go into any insight at all, doesn't make any difference. I can, first of all, change that insight from various statuses that I might have. I can also assign it to a specific user if I want to. And most importantly, from the insight, I can control the actions. So what I can do with this insight is maybe I want to generate a Jira ticket with it. Maybe I want to send it through Slack or Microsoft Teams. Maybe I want to notify somebody via PagerDuty. And so you as the administrator can create these actions. Now, in the lab guide here, in lab number 9 is where you can customize the actions. So I'm going to go back out here. I'm going to go into my configuration. I'm going to go into actions, not context actions, but actions. And here you and I can create a custom action. So I'm going to click create. I'm going to go ahead and call this custom action so I can easily find it later to delete it. And I'm going to put my initials in there. I'd like you to put your initials in there. So here I want to perform some sort of an action. Now, do I want this action to fire when it's created, when an insight's created, or when an insight's closed, or on demand? That can be done whatever. Do I want it to be done when the sensor is offline? Maybe I want to be notified and get an alert that the sensor's offline. Or do I want to know when a rule is changed or modified? Down here, we've got some pre-built-in types that you can use, right? We can send out a simple notification service. Those of you familiar with AWS know that we have a little messaging service that we can use to send out a message. We can send to Demisto. We can send to email. We can do a HTTP post. Send to HipChat, send to resilient of good old IBM fame. Send various sensor commands. A Slack webhook allows us to, again, create a specific payload we want to in Slack. In our exercise, we just want to choose email. So I'm going to click email here. And then who do I want to send this to? I can type in distribution lists. I can type in email addresses. I can type in whatever I want. Okay. And so basically I'm going to create an email link. So now when I click create, and now when I go into my insights and I go into a specific insight, any insight, doesn't make any difference. Now in the left side where my actions are, and you'll only see actions from your insights. Now I should be able to see, it might take a minute, but I should be able to see my new insight that I've created. So bear with me a second. Patience is not one of my big virtues. Patience is really not one of my big virtues. Just go ahead and grab this insight right here. There we go. And if I go into my actions, I should now see my insight. You know what? I want to make sure that I enabled it. It's possible I didn't enable it. Yep. So let me go back to my insights. I may have made a slight mistake here. That's what I get for not reading the directions. Custom action, JWM. Yeah, it's not active. That's the problem. Okay, let's make it active. There we go. That'll help. Now, let's try this again, this time with feelings. So my apologies. Obviously, that means I can obviously make an action not enabled. Somebody's probably going to ask, can I assign certain actions to certain specific users? No, I can't yet. That'd make a great product enhancement. So here's somebody's custom action. My custom action is not showing up yet, but it will. So there we go. Okay. Does the action need to be marked as active? Yes, Marcia, it does. I didn't. Shame on me. I'm here on a football scholarship. What can I say? So that's how you can customize actions. That's how you can go in here and customize a lot of various things. Okay. Now, the other thing we can do is, of course, we can create records or rules, excuse me. So here under content, we can go in and we can create rules. Yesterday, I showed you how you and I can go in and create a match rule. And we have some match rules from last night. But if I click create, I already cleaned up our match rules from yesterday. We want to focus on these types of rules, threshold and chain. So I'm going to click threshold. I'm going to click create. And I'm going to give this thing a name. And I'm going to call it my initials. And I want you to call it your initials. And I want you to call it threshold rule. Now, why? Because I'm going to have to clean these out and remove these when you're done. Okay. Imagine if class after class after class, we didn't clean these things up. We'd have a whole bunch of crazy rules. So here is where we are going to write an expression of what's going to cause that rule to trigger. And if we go to our documentation or a PDF guide, and if I go to lab 7, you'll see that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for a specific event ID. So for those of you into Windows, I'm looking for event ID 4625. So now I can take this code and I can right click on it and I can copy this code, but one little caveat. When you paste that code in, it doesn't, when we create a Word document or a PDF document, whatever, it typically takes these quotes and makes them smart quotes. And we want them to be text quotes. So what we need to do is we need to retype in the quotes. And again, we use single quotes here. So now this is the metadata tag. This is the event ID we're looking for. Now this expression looks correct. Now, the trick is this event occurs how many times within how many period of time. So again, back to my directions. I want records with 3 distinct values for the field device IP within 1 hour. So how do I get the distinct? Up here in the advanced is where I can choose to count distinct values. I come up to advanced, I open it up, I click it, we're good to go. And then down here, again, I'm looking for 3 distinct within an hour and 4 field device IP. So here in my field, I can select or start typing in device IP. So this is the condition that's going to cause this rule to fire. Now, since we're talking about device IP, we probably want to use that as our entity. And then here in my summary, I can say something like a Windows event 4625 has occurred, or whatever. I can type in whatever I want for the summary. I can type in whatever I want for the description. I can decide what the score of this signal should be. Again, I can go from 0 all the way to 10. 0 to 10. Okay. So I can give it an arbitrary value. And then here for the tags, this is where I use the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So I can say this is maybe a function of my discovery. So I'll choose discovery, and I can also use various techniques, tactics, and techniques in here from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Okay, there you go. Yes, Matt enjoyed my comment yesterday. I said in the description, release the Kraken. So you can put in here whatever you're trying to commit or you're trying to say. And all we have to do here then is click submit. And now we've got this new rule. Oh, there's one mistake I made. One big mistake. Shame on me. I forgot to mark it as a prototype. So please make sure you mark it as a prototype, then you can save it. Now, the reason you want to mark it as a prototype is it will not generate insights. If I go back here to my rules, and if I search for my rule name contains JWM, my initials, I can find this rule. I hope there it is. And if I click on this rule, I can see if it's been applied anywhere during this time frame. Right now, these are all ghosted. These are all grayed out. So this rule has not yet been applied to anything. But if I look at another rule, a common rule that we have in here, I can see that perhaps that rule is being applied. Just humor me for a second. There we go. There's a nice built-in rule. And I can see it's been applied in a few times during a few time places. So that is how we create, in this case, a threshold rule. Now, the other type of rules that we can create is we can create a chain rule. So I go up here to create. This time I choose chain. This, by the way, is lab 8 and our last lab that we're going to do. So we're going to go in here, like I said, create a chain rule. And here we're going to look to see that 10 records match this expression where they authenticated, where they were unable to authenticate. They tried to authenticate and the value is false. And then they finally do authenticate. So again, if I go in here to my chain rule, I'm going to give it a name, again, my initials, and I'm going to put in here the name chain rule. And I would appreciate if you would call it chain rule as well with your initials. That way I know how to clean it up, how to delete it when we're done. So here, again, in my Boolean logic, I'm going to paste this code in. Oops, that didn't take. Hang on a second. Let's grab this code. Let's right click on it. Let's copy it. Okay. And again, it's just for fun here. I'll just go ahead and type in false. Let's make sure it works. Hang on a second. Oops. I should just, I'll tell you what, let's just paste it in and be done with it. Okay. All right. So basically I'm saying, look, if they have, and I'll arrow up here to say that, 10 times they have unsuccessfully logged in, and then one time they magically log in, and I'm going to go ahead and paste this in, but I'm going to change this to true. Okay, there we go. Change that to true. So this is my logic, and this is a chain rule because again, I can have these two things, or by the way, I could add others in here. I could have a third thing or a fourth thing or a fifth thing. And I do probably want to group this by a specific entity. What entity do I want to use by? Again, here are the various entities we have: an application, an account ID, base ID, all of that fun stuff. In my case, I believe it's device IP is what I want to use per the direction, but you get a sense for what different entity fields I have. So you can see we've got lots of different entities here. Oops, there we go. Device IP, there we go. Okay. Then again, over here, what do I want to say? What entity am I dealing with? Again, probably device IP. What do I want to say for a summary? What do I want to say for a description? What score do I want to give it? What tags? Then I click submit, and there you have the chain rule. So creating these rules is not hard. Now, again, from our perspective, we don't know whether analysts will be creating rules or administrators will be creating rules. That's why it's in both courses, to help you all out. Any questions about creating rules? Any questions about the course before I start wrapping it up and getting you all ready for the exam? All right, then. For those of you who want to take the exam, and you can take it now or you can take it later, it's entirely up to you. I recommend you take it now, because if you get stuck on a question, as many of you know, you can ask me. I will be here while you're taking the exam. So if you get stuck, you can ask me a question. You can even ask me the question, and I will try to help you out. Now, what I need you to do is I need you to go back to the Sumo Logic environment here. And quite frankly, where you're logged in as training plus analyst over here, if you don't see it, again, open it up. I want you to log out of here. So to log out of here, you click on that training plus admin account, you click on sign out, and you're signed out. I want you to go to your company's Sumo Logic environment, and I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. Okay. And so I want you to make sure when you log in, you have your name down here, not training plus admin. Training plus admin, whatever number, has passed this thing numerous times. We don't want them to take the exam. We want you to take the exam. We want you to get credit for it. Now, as far as getting to the exam, you're going to click on the little house tab, click on certification, click get certified. Now, when you click get certified, some of you may see a pop-up panel appear that says we need to verify your email. Basically, it's a security thing in our product. We don't want to move you from one environment to another environment, from our Sumo Logic environment to our LMS environment without your permission. So what happens is you'll get a pop-up here that says we want to verify your email, and you click on that button. And within a minute, you're going to get an email from Sumo Logic, and in the body of that email is another button that if you click on, you're basically giving us permission. Now you won't get that pop-up anymore. Now when you click get certified, it's going to let you go into our LMS. And right now, I'm not sure why our LMS didn't load quickly and quietly for me. So let me run this again. Is the site down? Yes, I'm beginning to wonder. Again, this is just like our product is software in the service, and I'm wondering if it's down. So because it's not, I'm not getting there. Is anybody else getting there? Looks like it's down to me. Yes, in fact, I'd say it looks like it's down. Very good. All right. Let me reach out to our certification manager and let them know that it looks like it's down. But if it's down, you can't take the exam. So I don't know what we're going to be able to do about it. You can take it anytime you want to, but obviously you can't take it right now if the site's down. The exam one, yes, honorary certificates for all. No, I still got to take the exam. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. Try to send the link and answer a question in Slack. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. What we want to do, Odell, what we want to do is we probably want to reach out to Sarah Gina, let her know skill jar is down. So, and we'll do that here in a little bit. Our certification manager will let her know that that site is down. Although if it's down, it's probably nothing we can do about it. Okay. So I guess the point is, ladies and gentlemen, I guess right now we can't take the exam. I don't know when this is going to come back up. So my encouragement for you is, unless you got any questions, you're welcome to ask. Otherwise, you're welcome to sign out. And again, I want to thank you all for attending the class. We hope to see you again in training again real soon. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Please be safe and please be healthy. Thank you. That's all I got. Odell, anything else you want to answer? Okay, no. So folks, that's it. I apologize that the site's down. Please have a great day. Please be safe. I'm going to stop the recording.